Justin, how you going? Welcome.
Hi.
Viewer on YouTube, welcome. It's just awesome to see you here and to have you join Justin Oberste and I for what is, I'm not going to say like what promises to be an amazing chat, but I just really, like, I'm not going to make promises that I can't keep, but I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a friggin' orgasmic chat. This is going to be absolutely amazing. I know I'm not going to oversell it, Justin, but you've got something to live up to.
Yeah, I'm into it. Let's go.
All right. So you've got a coffee?
I do.
Okay. I got a coffee. Viewer, I hope you've got a coffee because this is just going to be one that you want to get settled in for. I'm going to press play on this, do the intro, and then let's get cracking. All right. All right. So everything's doing its thing there. Okay. So, hey, welcome to Connection Over Coffee with me, Phil McAuliffe, the Loneliness Guy. Today, in this conversation, we're just going to have an amazing chat with my friend Justin Oberste from Santa Barbara in the US. Say hi, Justin.
Hello.
Before we get into this conversation, I do need to say that this podcast contains content relating to the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of gay men. If that's going to offend you or anybody in earshot, now's the time for you to go. But if you're down for a great conversation, how about you and Justin go get us a table? And after a word from my friend Mike Campbell, I'll get the coffees and I'll bring them over to you. Let's get started. All right. So
well done.
Yeah, so if when you listen to this, there's going to be my friend Mike Campbell saying an ad about his coaching services and how they can help men take a step, and he'll do it in his charming Kiwi accent.
Which way? Step which way?
Yeah, well, anyway, really, a step is a step.
Something.
Yeah. So and that's the thing. Like we can wait until we want to take the right step, and get it right.
And what is the right step? Ooh.
I know. So this has been a great chat, Justin. No, and we're just going to totally derail what we were going to talk about and talk about taking our steps. And then the coffee noise will be going, and then I'll come back and say, here you go. Now, if this is the first time that you've joined me for Connection Over Coffee, I want to say hi and a huge welcome. I recognize that the mere act of pressing play, whether you're joining us on YouTube or through the podcast and listening through a service, I recognize that mere act could have had you wrestling with the uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, indeed the stigma of loneliness, and what pressing play might actually mean for you, or what you're making it mean for you. However you got here, I want to say hi and welcome. It's just absolutely bloody fantastic that you're here. And if you're a return viewer, if you're a return listener, I just am honored to be graced with your presence once more. Thank you. And please do let me know if you feel that I can help and support you, if me or my team can help and support you as you work through your loneliness. With all of that said, I really want to just jump straight into this conversation and with my friend Justin, because I'm still getting over the the blog post that Justin wrote. And Justin, your blog post, which was published on the 7th of October, was beautiful. But I want to explore that some more, but I always forget to do this. Justin, welcome.
Thank you, Phil.
And who are you? What's going on? What's brought you here today?
Gosh, what a great question. I am a multitude of things, and I feel like I've already lived probably 5 lives, maybe 5.5. But currently I was born a cisgendered male and I identify as queer, and that can be another podcast
Yeah.
as to why that is. But I right now am practicing to be a licensed therapist, and I just got a master's degree, and I'm also training to become a sex therapist. And I live in California in beautiful, oh my gosh, beautiful Santa Barbara, where the cascade of mountains run right into the ocean. So it has been such a treat to live here. And I've been in Santa Barbara for probably a year and a half now. Gosh, yeah, about a year and a half. And really focusing on studying, researching, working with clients, of course, and healing, and trying to see what's going to happen next after I get these certifications and my licensure and dive in.
Yeah.
And you are popping my podcast cherry. An Aussie popped my cherry. So look, I'm excited.
That's going to be a proud boast for you, and as it's a proud boast for me. I mean, it's always an honor. It's always an honor. I'll be gentle, and because this is we have the best conversations though. So it just happens to be that I'm wearing headphones, holding a microphone. And this is being recorded, so no pressure, but we have the best conversations anyway. So this is just just ratcheting it up a notch. You're ready.
Ready.
But yeah, like I think that's probably going to go in the promo. An Aussie popped my cherry.
An Aussie popped my cherry. A Southern boy.
Yeah. Again, and I know you'll call me sir, and be unfailingly polite in that Southern way. So yeah, good. Well, thank you. Welcome. It's, oh my God, like this is just amazing already. Like I'm so excited to have this conversation because good. Because in your blog post, so the loneliness of change, I'm going to say right now, I'm so envious of your writing, and it's like it's very sort of, it's poetic and sort of dripping with wisdom. And viewer, listener, if you've not read it, there's going to be, well, there is a link to it in the episode description. Do yourself a favor. And as Justin says in the blog post, get yourself a coffee, get yourself a nice cup of tea, get yourself a glass of red wine or whatever, and settle in. Because as I said to you before, Justin, in this, before I pressed record on this, I don't know if I've read such an eloquent description of the horrid dark nights of the soul that kind of hasn't gone into like poetry or song lyrics or something like that. So right up, I want to say thank you so much for sharing both your wisdom and your experience with me and the viewer and the listener and the reader. I want to say thank you most profoundly for that. We're going to explore dark nights of the soul, but I'm curious, how did it feel? How did it feel for you to share your experience like that?
Oh gosh, it's cathartic, but also Yeah, like I said, a lot of people don't know this part of me, or these chain of events really. So, except for some close family and close friends. So there is some vulnerability there. There is some uncomfortableness, but there's also this letting go, this kind of deep calmness. It's like, you know what? It's good. It's helpful. Someone might need this. Somebody probably needs to hear this, because I mean, if I would have read something like this 2.5 years ago, maybe even a year and a half ago, honestly, it would have just blown my mind. I would have felt seen. I would have probably felt less lonely, of course, but it would have really been a huge help, and probably would have helped some of the hurdles along the way. But I needed to experience it. So it feels good. It's powerful stuff that we need to kind of tap into a little bit, especially as, you know, queer people, LGBTQIA. It's Yeah, it needs to be talked about. It's not often. If anything, it's suppressed or it's turned to a substance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And catharsis is such a good word.
Mm.
Catharsis, and it almost is cathartic to say catharsis. Like, just almost saying it is like it comes with that release of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I've variously, you know, heard, like, you know, how we feel after, you know, sharing something like that. And this is a bit of a tangent, but, you know, sometimes, like, when I've written or shared something and it's been really hard to construct it, you know, and this has kind of become shorthand in this household, and my kids say this a lot. It's like, you know, you're doing a mental poo or an emotional poo,
Yeah.
and yeah, like, once you actually sort of get it out, you feel so much better. So, you know, after having a good cry,
Mm-hmm.
you know, after, you know, frankly, doing a good crap, like,
Yeah.
you know, you feel so good,
Mm.
and you know, releasing about it. That's, you know, welcome to the minds of teenage boys, but in our house.
We've all
But
been there. We've all
yeah,
been
yeah.
there.
Look, and I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not still there. I'm still there in many
Yeah,
ways.
same.
Yeah. But I remember, you know, when you sent it to me and we were sort of communicating by text and talking about sort of that, you know, as Brene Brown calls it, you know, the vulnerability hangover,
Mm.
and the act of self-care that's needed after, you know, something, you know, that requires us to be vulnerable. And how did you know? Did you stop? Did you stop and actually acknowledge what you did?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I think I told you, after I sent it through to you, I had a few more sessions with clients. But then that evening, I was able to really just kind of settle down and feel a sense of release, sense of calm. And that's kind of when I write things, if I feel a sense of release, I know that it was necessary. There's times where I've written things and I never feel that kind of comfort. I'm like, maybe I need to reevaluate this, or, you
Yeah,
know, go through and edit or change it up somehow. So that's kind of been my test with things. But I definitely felt it. And of course, it's you. So I felt it comfortable being in your hands and to talk to you about it. And it's a good experience. It's a really good experience. Now, there is also the part where we live, especially in America. I'm not sure about Australia, where it is people are too vulnerable.
yeah,
So there's got to be a good balance. You know, there's times where I'll open up social media and people are telling all their garbage and stuff. It's like, whoa, hold on here. No. So I think there needs to be sort of a healthy balance with it. And this felt like an opportunity to throw in some vulnerability, but also some other kind of really core life lessons that we can all learn here.
yeah. And you're right. We can use vulnerability and connection, I've noticed at this point feel like they're almost throwaway concepts.
Mm.
And, you know, we know that connection comes from when we're vulnerable. And so when we are feeling isolated, when we're feeling lonely, when we're, you know, not able to go and see people, when, you know, pandemic or not, you know, and social media, and this is, you know, getting off the topic, but I think it's important to say, is that when we, you know, reach for social media and use it as like an opposed as the connection, you know, we might need to check ourselves, because
Yes.
you know, we can be doing, we can be trying to hijack connection by being hyper authentic, hyper vulnerable, and as a way of kind of hijacking connection. And we always need to remember,
people don't know how to. There is a lack of education and accountability, all of it, with adults now, and even, you know, kids too. People don't know how to connect like authentically. There is something that's missing, and they don't really know what it is or what it means.
No, and so, you know, then there's like this guy on the internet, the loneliness guy, who's all about promoting, you know, destigmatizing loneliness and promoting authentic connection for gay men globally. And, you know, I think just, and this is the reason why I bring it up, because it's like central to my mission here at the Loneliness Guy, is authentic connection. Authentic connection can't be shortcut. It can't be short-circuited. It requires time, it requires patience, it requires conscious investment. And if we're constantly, all of us, or so many of us, are like, you know, regurgitating all our traumas, that's not connection.
No,
that's not connection.
It's a buffer.
Yeah.
It's a buffer.
Yeah, and you know, I just feel really that's important to mention right now, about authenticity, and being authentic requires being vulnerable. But not everybody has earned the right to hear your story. Not everybody has earned the right to hear my story. But I have earned the right to hear my story. I have earned the right to, you know, to love and support me through the things that I'm proud of and the things that cause me shame. I'm, you know, allowed to love me. I'm allowing myself to love me for all of me and how I'm evolving. And there are some people in my life who have earned that right too. And
that can be a whole nother podcast as to how you can evaluate that, because that's so important.
Noting that down. But that's critical. Like, and this is the thing, someone somewhere, you and someone, at least someone somewhere, has earned that right to hear your story. And so, Justin, I mean this, you know, from, you know, a place, you know, for having said that, I mean that it is an absolute privilege and honor to hold space for your story. Because it is. It's always a privilege and an honor, whether it's a conversation with another man experiencing loneliness, or another human, I should say, experiencing loneliness, who slides into my DMs on Instagram and says, you know, gives me some feedback, and then, you know, we like, they share their story with me. It's an absolute honor and a privilege to hear that, because sometimes that's the very first time that they've expressed that. And having consumed some of the content on, like, through my social media or through blogs or podcasts, through great conversations with people like you that they have the language now. They're learning the language of how to articulate the void that they might be feeling, or to put some kind of boundaries around that void. And so there's a couple of things there. Your words and your experience are teaching people, teaching the audience, teaching the viewer, teaching the listener, teaching the reader how to enunciate, how to put words to feelings.
In order to connect.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. But when we do connect, with real, genuine, authentic, in a real, genuine and authentic way, using vulnerability or with vulnerability, we can often, and I find this all the time, and it's usually a really good marker of like success in the same way that you described, but not success, but I'm on the right track, is when I feel a vulnerability hangover.
Yes.
And so that's why I asked. That's why I asked that, that you actually took time to actually, not be, or not do, I should say, rather be, and allow yourself to be for a moment. Because when we're chronic overachievers, like we both are, when we're, both, awesome humans and driven, and driven by service to others, we can put our needs last. So, that you had a few more clients, fantastic, very professional. And I'm sure you gave them great, you held space for them beautifully, but I wanted to make sure that you actually had some time to do what refilled your cup. So I'm really, really glad. Yeah. So, and that's a lesson that I wanted to sort of share with the audience, is that, because I think it's critical when we're talking about dark nights of the soul and the loneliness of change. And the reason is, when we are going through a dark night of the soul, we fear the vulnerability that comes after it, or like the decision point that and the consequences that come after it. And I'm going to say, I'm going to suggest, Justin, that in writing this, you may have gone through a dark night of the soul or two, in like how you're going to frame it. Might not have been an entire evening, but you may have sort of hesitated at a point.
Oh yeah, I had to take breaks.
Yeah.
Writing this, oh yeah, it's still very, very real. It wasn't that long ago a lot of this stuff happened, so definitely had to take breaks, get some coffee, go for a walk, go to the gym. Sauna time, just relax. Yeah.
Nice.
You gotta be gentle. We have to be gentle with ourselves with these things. And I even try to incorporate aftercare to stuff. Self-care, yes, great, but aftercare too is really important. So yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay, right? So,
well, that's when I think something's good. You get some of that heaviness, you get a little bit of that anxiety in a relationship, at work, with friends. I mean, across the board, it's pushing you somewhere. It's making you feel a little uncomfortable. It's good.
Yeah, it's not. It's like it's good in the fact that medicine is good. Nobody wants the medicine because the medicine can taste pretty, medicine can taste bad, can make us uncomfortable. The medicine is an inconvenience, but it does its thing and we feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But we can avoid taking the medicine because we don't want the discomfort.
Oh yeah.
We don't want the pain. We don't want the inconvenience. We don't want the disruption to the current state of dysfunction that we're enduring, but it's our own dysfunction and we're kind of used to it, so we're okay. Mm-hmm. So we don't do it. And this is a point that I want to make and I want to explore with you. And in the in your blog post,
let's explore.
Yeah, with the Dark Nights of the Soul. Dark Nights of the Soul are horrible, absolutely horrible, right? And there's a reason that there's lots of poems, there's lots of songs, there's lots of smart people over time have written about the anguish, the angst of enduring dark nights of the soul. But they're necessary. And they're almost a rite of passage.
Yes, I'm glad you said that because we lack that so much in culture now, rites of passages.
Yeah. How so?
Especially for LGBTQ people. Historically, there were always, even in tribes and stuff, some sort of rite of passage into womanhood, manhood, however you identified. And now it's, we don't have it. We have, we have people on our social medias that have the best bodies in the world or look like they have the best lives and they vacation all the time. And we think we need to become that.
Yeah.
No wonder pharmaceutical companies are doing incredible right now.
Yeah. Yes. And I think, perhaps a rite of passage right now is the share on social media.
Could be, yeah. A rite of passage for me, if I could step into the world, would be to actually feel our feelings. That's the first step.
I love that. That, yeah. And in all my work, I get really frustrated when I hear that advice. It's correct. It's absolutely correct. We do need to feel our feelings. We need to think our thoughts and feel our feelings. We don't think our feelings, right? And I think, before we press record on this, I shared with you that I'm very pragmatic, very, very, very pragmatic. And I've been talking to you over the past few weeks about, synchronicity and, seeing 11:11 everywhere and stuff. But like when I hear, feel the feelings, I'm like, yep, get that. I understand that. I really do. But how the fuck do I do it?
You're up here.
Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, hippie. All right. Like you can, drop out, tune out, whatever it is, and sit there cross-legged in the middle of a meadow and feel your feelings. However, I've got shit to do. So presuming that I'm not alone in that, how do you suggest, like, feeling the feelings when we are in a dark night of the soul and using that as a rite of passage?
Well, most likely you're in a dark night of the soul because you don't feel. That could be possible. But dark nights can be so many things. It could be a medical condition. It could be a sickness. It could be something like that, or, this deep depression, kind of like what it was for me.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it was suppressing so much, and sometimes having ideas as to maybe I'm not this isn't the best job for me. Maybe this relationship isn't the best relationship for me, but things are going really well. So I'm just going to stuff it down and just move forward. I'm going to pour myself into my work. I'm going to pour myself into whatever I can. I'm also an artist, so I would pour it into artwork. And, you know, that's kind of the American mindset, productivity. You know, the busier you are, the better. And that's really hurting us now too. But that's all I knew to do. And the dark night, consumed me.
How so?
Well, it came in slowly, but when it consumed me, it almost was kind of like, it really was like someone was sitting on my shoulders constantly. And everything I noticed, feedback at work or with clients, or at the time I had a very different job than I do now, pierced me like really deep. And I'm like, what is going on? And I would cry over the smallest things. And I at that time hadn't cried in years.
Yeah.
And I'm in books and movies, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? And I think I even cried in an episode of RuPaul's Drag Race. Like, I was a mess. And I didn't have the words, I didn't have the literature, I didn't necessarily have the relationships either to kind of help me figure out what this is. Instead, I just, again, kept myself busy with work. But what kind of came of it was some really difficult moves and difficult clientele at the time, and things just got heavier and heavier. And all I needed to do was just to cut it off. Quit the job, you know, move out where I was living, and be free of it. That's all I knew to do. And once I did that, I didn't really believe in a God much during that time. But after I cut those things out of my life that were just honestly making me miserable, the universe really opened up doors in such an incredible way. I was like, what is going on? Like, this path, very narrow, skinny path, really just opened up in front of me. And I was like, I have to do it. This stuff back here has not served me. It's made me completely miserable. I have no other choice. I've got to see where this goes.
I'm keen to explore the sentence that you said, and it was said really quickly a little while ago. So if we were reading the transcript back, probably, you know, a page ago, and where you said, you know, I needed to, you know, and I think you even said, you know, I just needed to, you know, cut that. I needed to get out of that situation. I needed to quit that job, get that negative shit out of my life. And there's a lot in that phrase. And it's a short phrase, but as phrases are. But when you know, to that point of deciding to take action, to do something without knowing what the consequences were going to be and how it was going to end up. And you can look, you know, in hindsight, in the rearview mirror, and go, yeah, that, you know,
look at those guns. Yeah, hindsight.
Oh God, I'm blushing. But yeah, so, you know, I'll point back like this. But yeah, looking back with hindsight there, and in the rearview mirror, you can actually see that the path has widened. But at the time, I'm going to say that you didn't know, you know, if your narrow path was actually going to become like the point of a needle.
Which it did.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is something that I want to, you know, that you said so beautifully, and that gave me an absolute soulgasm, because I felt seen by your words and your experience from my experience. And So before we move on into the widening path, I want to sort of come back to this, the words that you used were empty, numb, overworked.
Mm-hmm.
I felt empty.
Mm.
I felt numb. I was consumed by work. And ironically, it was work that I chose to take on so I could numb and,
Yes.
and become empty. But then he said, to alleviate, I'm reading here, but to alleviate the black hole, you turn to food, sex, alcohol, work, vacations, so holidays to those of us not in the US, art, yoga, meditation, and even prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be some content coming up, everyone, on this, on numbing, and essentially mind how we numb. But Justin, you did minus meditation, yoga, and prayer, and art. You did pretty much what I did, and what I do when I'm numbing.
Mm-hmm.
What were you trying to do? How did you realize that you were numbing? There's two questions there.
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, it's so good. I would say kind of those questions would creep in of, is this the right thing I'm doing with my life? Am I in the right relationship? Am I living in the right place? When those would creep in, the thought, I would kind of take this deep down into more of a soul level of this. What are you doing? What are you doing? You are so lost in this experience and you don't even know what you're doing. So when that would creep in, it was like, I don't want to hear that. I can't face that right now. I'm going to go do some hot yoga, and then I'm going to go for a run, and then I'm going to go get a margarita and Mexican food, and then I'm going to go have sex. And then after that, I'm going to watch a scary movie. And then after that, I'm going to try to sleep.
Yeah.
And then next day, I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to be so focused in work that I'm going to forget all of this. And then when I get home, I'm going to do something else that's not going to make me think about it. And every day was like that for a while.
Yeah. You planned your way?
Oh yeah. It was scary. It was scary. I was working so hard for that particular life.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was doing all the work. And at a time in my life, 10 years prior, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to embody. This is my chosen path. And then it wasn't. In fact, it made me, I felt, not a very good person. I felt very materialistic. I felt very self-centered. I found myself pushing intimate friendships away and just solely focused on myself, how I looked, how I was perceived, reputation, and my soul, my interior self just fought against it, kind of like an immune system. It's like, this isn't you. And so that's when a lot of the feelings started surfacing that scared me.
Viewer, listener, I think that there's well, not I think, there definitely is something in there. When we try and force something that's not meant to be, we can double down on that which we had used previously that we thought worked but really didn't work. Because if it really worked, we wouldn't be back at this point to then double down again and double down again and double down again when we realize that what we've been doing is not working and we're still at the same place within ourselves.
Yeah.
And you shared this, Justin, in your blog post, where you said that the old techniques weren't working.
Yeah.
And again, this is a point where I felt really seen. because that which I had been doing and essentially the promises that I'd made myself, you know, if I did this, then this would happen. And then that's when I'd be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'd feel ease and calm within myself if I got the promotion, or when this thing that I was organizing at work went really well, or, you know, if, I don't know, like honestly, if I went like, you know, 6 months without looking at gay porn, like, you know, would have been cured, you know, would have been, you
Wow.
know, if I just needed to, you know, to cut myself off, and, you know, deny and like focus on, you know, being a straight man, you know, focus on that part of me, you know, and you know, double down. Then you double down often enough and you like, you know, quadrupling down, and like, you know, it becomes exponential double downingness over time. And, you know, really,
Mm-hmm.
that has a limited lifespan.
Yeah. What changed it for you?
Well, the dark night of my soul. Well, one of them, when I realized that what I had been doing, others were benefiting from it.
When did that kind of happen for you?
I remember a couple of times. So when I was doing, when I was in Mike Campbell's program, when we went through some, you know, the things that caused us shame, I realized that I'd been carrying those around, simultaneously carrying them around with me, but also running far away from them, as fast as I could from them, including my sexuality. And, you know, regret and, well, shame, not regret, but shame over how I treated people, others. Like, you know, when they were close to seeing who I was and how insecure I would be like a cornered snake and just like lash out. Absolutely, like, you know, my words were weapons. You know, not particularly big, not particularly strong, but my words were weapons. My brain and my words were my weapons. And so, you know, having been bullied, I would bully. And that causes, you know, still causes me great shame. And then, you know, shame about my sexuality and things. How, like, my long night or dark night of the soul came to a head where I was reading something from Brené Brown, and it was the opening chapter of Braving the Wilderness. And I just reread this book a few months ago, back in our winter, and still it gets me right in the feels. Gets me right in the feels. But like you, like when you just said before, Justin, that, you know, you weren't a crier, and then you found yourself like, you know, tearing up over like, you know, an ad on TV. Like, yeah,
even who knows, maybe even like a Teletubby commercial or something stupid.
Yes. And so for me, I remember reading this book and reading the first chapter, and it was all about belonging. It was all about belonging and feeling that she didn't belong because, you know, for, you know, and sharing her story. And I remember I very, like, I bought the book, and it was, you know, living in Seoul at the time, and bought the book and, you know, said goodnight to everyone and climbed into bed and like snuggled down and, you know, started reading the book, and I finished the chapter. And it was like the most powerful, like 30 pages in my life. And I remember like going,
wow,
what's, I'm leaking out of my eyes. What's with this and stuff? And I'm like,
wow.
no, I'm actually crying. I'm crying. And it was the first time that I had read and started learning the language of the importance of belonging. And I'd realized that I was lonely, but it was an important, and like, you know, a year before, and like that loneliness and that realization and realizing that I'd needed to get help led me to, you know, getting help and going through a coaching program. And so I'd felt a lot more connected to myself, but it was the first time that belonging had kind of really registered with me, and that I needed to belong to myself. And for me to feel that I belonged in the world, I needed to belong to myself. And I wasn't. I didn't belong to me. I belonged, you know, to everybody and everything else. And so that's what that tattoo is about. It's a very visible reminder on my right forearm to belong to me, to be me wherever I am in the world. And that started my long night of the soul. And
learning, you know, how to belong to yourself. And
knowing that I can still belong to myself, even though I wasn't perfect. I was perfectly imperfect. And that was such a powerful realization for me. And from this point, tracing back, you know, looking back in my rearview mirror, I can point back to the time where, you know, that realization brought me to this point right now. Now, you know, that's a lot for 30 pages, you know, but it is and was absolutely life altering for me. It gave me the language to begin to feel my feelings and to put myself out there.
And in that belonging, I'm curious, with knowing the language and allowing the feelings, I'm just gonna guess you found a way to connect better to people.
By being me and making a decision to show up, not like, you know, I vow and declare forevermore to show up who I am. And it's like, no, I make a deal with myself each and every time I get to a fork in the road, and there can be multiple forks in the road every day. Like, do I show up as who I feel everyone else is expecting me to be in this moment, or do I show up as myself, as perfectly imperfect as I am? And the trick for me, the deal that I do, like the commitment that I have with myself, is that I choose that more often than not. And when I'm not, I pay attention to it and ask myself, why am I not showing up as me? Why do I feel like I can't show up as me? Is this the situation that I now need to be? If I can't be me and I can't be accepted for who I am, is this a situation that I need to be? And so for me, it's not necessarily a big dark night of the soul anymore, but it's taking those decisions during the day that, as a point you said, helps me avoid those long dark nights of the soul. But God, it's hard. God, it's hard. But it's the stuff of life, right?
It is. And we need to mess up.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. How do I mess up properly?
Well, even if you try properly, you're still going to keep messing up. I mean, that's kind of the goal. We got to mess up. We got to fuck up. And, you know, sure, let's suppress. It's going to come out eventually. Yes. That's how we just deepen ourselves. That's how we add character.
That's not the answer I wanted to hear.
I'm sorry.
It's the answer I needed to hear, and I think that's the answer that we all need to hear. We all know, but no, I wanted the scoop. I wanted, you know exactly right. You know, again, picking up my pencil here and writing down notes. what was gonna fix it? What was gonna be the hack that get me through life, unscathed? And
so Phil, your homework is to fuck up some and disappoint
some. Sure. And yeah, I think that's anyone who knows me well will go, yeah, that's you do that. I do need to, and this right back to the very beginning of our chat, even before we pressed record. It's the taking of a step. I still, despite being the loneliness guy, despite being the lonely diplomat, despite making, a side hustle here on loneliness and destigmatizing it and promoting authentic connection. And I still struggle to take a step because I want to take the step. How's it for you?
Steps?
Yeah. Difference between taking a step versus the step.
It's I can answer that question in so many ways. I guess the right step feels a certain way. The wrong step feels a certain way. And I will say I have learned the most from the wrong step. But there are times where the right step has been really great and beneficial and safe. But the unsafe route sometimes, the unsafe route can be way more rewarding.
Yeah. I just have an image in my mind from like a car ad, like a car commercial. And, it's one of these SUVs that, you flick a switch and it becomes a four-wheel drive, like a 4x4. And they go from, the freeway and take a and then, go up over the mountain using the fire trails or something like that. And, we need to take the fire trails.
Yeah, we do. That's a great example. I mean, I did that with a friend of mine in Colorado through the Rockies. We could have taken the interstate to Vail, but instead we took this back road that led us to this beautiful blue lake. And it was a dead end, and it was a horrible like venture to get there. So many holes, and we had this fabulous Jeep that was just muddy. We were muddy, but it was one of the best experiences I've had. Yep. We never made it to Vail. We stayed at the lake.
At the dead end. The dead end,
and it was incredible.
Where you needed to be.
And it was incredible.
I love it. Oh my God. See, listener, viewer, I told you this would be orgasmic. I want to come back to explore a couple of other things in the time that we've got remaining, Justin. But I wanted to revisit that point in your story where you said that you realized that what was happening now wasn't working for you. And you looked around for help. So you realized that, through your dark night of the soul, that in order for tomorrow to be different, you needed to do something, and you looked around. And you looked around for help.
Yeah.
What happened?
I didn't really get it. Which, like I mentioned, I looked for professional help.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really find it the way I really needed it. And then I went to friends who could empathize with me, which was huge. And even I had a few friends speak some really interesting thoughts to the path I was on and the trajectory, which really helped. But I, for some reason, went to books. And I read this book. It had been out for a few years at this time, but it was called Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. and it was multiple stories where she worked anonymously on an advice column, and no one knew who she was, but they would write in their great woes or their dark nights, what they were going through, and she would kind of give her advice back. And it was huge for me. I was like, I want to do that. That is so cool. I want someone I need to write in so I can get that feedback. And so that plugged in the thought of, I recall some people, and this is the good side of social media, that have had some really rough journeys to get to where they are now, which I felt at the time was successful work. They were serving the communities, they were serving the LGBTQIA community. And it was a very small community where I lived in rural kind of South Carolina. So I was like, maybe I could do that. Let me reach out to these individuals. And, to my surprise, they reached back. And just being able to search, finding out what you need, but then be able to search for it in this very socially connected world, really panned out well for me. And they weren't, and I'll say they weren't the ones with the six-pack abs. They weren't posting thirst traps. They weren't coaches. And I love coaches, but that wasn't what they were doing. They were actually therapists.
Yep.
And I felt this instant connection to a few of them. And actually one of them that helped me way back then, I'm actually working for now.
Love it.
And as a mentor and as my supervisor. So it's been an incredible journey. But just by, reaching out to them, no expectation back. When they contacted me back, it was this belonging that you're talking about. It was this, I feel seen. No matter how short the dialogue was, but I held on to their words like it was a treasure, because it spoke directly to where I was in that moment. And that's when I knew there might be something to this. This feels a little hopeful. It's a little bit of light on that very narrow path. And quit the job, and then had to come out to the West Coast where these people who I was reaching out to actually lived. Came out to help some family, and was able to meet them in person while I was out there helping family. And that's when doors began to open. The path started getting a little bit wider, and I was just amazed. I was dumbfounded. I didn't put it in the article, but I actually took a week and a half road trip solo up through the California wilderness to really sit in this, I didn't have a job.
Yep.
I had a little bit of money in the bank from some some paintings I had sold. That's all I had. But I disappeared into Yosemite, Sequoia, and went up into the redwood forest to really sit in this, to feel my feelings that I had probably suppressed for 10 years.
You gave yourself time.
It was life-changing.
Yeah.
Completely life-changing. Alone. I went alone. And it was very scary, actually. There were some really scary things that happened along the road that someday I would love to write about. That was really good for me. I had to dig deep.
Yeah.
I fought for it. I fought for that alone time. I fought for that time to actually feel all those uncomfortable things.
Let's not let this moment go past without saying how awesomely courageous that is. Because to the casual listener, the idea of going on a road trip or any kind of trip to find yourself has a certain romance around it.
Mm.
But realizing that getting life lessons, realizing that the tools that you need to be you are within you. And they might be might be ill-formed. They might need some help to form up into something that's, that is easily used and readily used, but what you need to be you is within you. And sometimes we don't know them until we have to find them. really quickly.
To find them, you have to make space for it. You have to make time in order to even find them. And then once they're there, it's beautiful and uncomfortable as fuck.
Yeah. 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 Another, I said there because there's more content on my spreadsheet of future content around time and busyness and connection. So I'm just going to bookmark that for future content. You said in both, here, Justin, and in the blog post about the universe working then in your favor, doors opening up for you, people coming back to you, you holding on to their words like a treasure, which I love because words are treasures. And they're priceless treasures.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you come out to the West Coast and, moved to California and were, house sitting, as we would call it in Australia. Said the word sublet. And then, found yourself living in your car.
Mm-hmm.
And so what occurred to me in this part of the story is that you had not one dark night of the soul and then changed everything. Like, episode 1 of the long night of the soul was over on the East Coast, that then had you moving across the country, saying goodbye to your fiance, saying goodbye to your dog, saying goodbye to your house, the job, all that kind of stuff, for something different, something new, something more aligned that was calling you over in California.
Yeah.
And then when you were in California, it wasn't like what all of us imagine, your Malibu lifestyle to be, in a multi-bajillion-dollar mansion overlooking the beach. You had a different Malibu experience, and came to another long dark night of the soul. So there's a couple of things in there that I really want to underline, bold, italicize, highlight, etc. Is that dark nights of the soul, loneliness associated with change, is not do it once, done forever. Going to keep on coming back to it as life keeps on giving us lessons to learn. But yeah, you were given I was about to say quite the rear ending, but that's
which happened later too.
Yeah, but as a result, you're living in alignment still had you being uncomfortable.
Oh yeah. There is so much here I could talk about, but yes, it's during the course of my grad school experience, and so many really horrific things happened during that time. There was this steady force within myself of you're doing the right thing. You're supposed to be here. Remember that. And it's kind of that little quiet voice I remember hearing back when I was in the other life, and it was telling me you may not be making the best decisions right now. It's still that little small voice. And it really hit me hard when I was in Malibu. And I was only in Malibu because there were some places where you could kind of park and stay overnight in your car without getting arrested. And the coastline, of course, is cooler. So it's just more comfortable there. But I remember one morning waking up and driving to this area that had a public restroom, and I had to get to school. And I go in there to just kind of clean up to go to my grad classes. And probably smelled horrible, but just using the sink just to kind of wash up, brush my teeth. And someone or quite a few people had maybe come in there homeless, I'm guessing, had shot up. So there was needles all over the floor. There was blood that had been squirted on the walls. And it smelled horrible in there. And I'm looking in the mirror, brushing my teeth, and I have kind of like a dress shirt on and trying to wash my face too. And it just was a moment of like, what the fuck? what is going on? And I'm just like, I guess I need to experience, like, this is a very low point. I have no home. I'm in a meth lab getting ready and for school. Like, you can't make this shit up. And but I knew that there was something to this. There really was something to this that I needed to get through. I needed to feel alone. I needed to feel like I lived off the streets, which kind of was what I was doing, for a purpose. And even now in my private practice work, and when I worked for the community clinic and that, working with people in immense crisis, it was a completely different experience for me. I knew exactly what they were feeling. I knew the low. I knew the situation. I knew what it was like to not have a roof over your head. It created this deep empathy for this line of work, which was tough at the time, grueling, but was necessary and is very, very powerful.
How did you deal with, in that moment, where you're cleaning yourself up in public toilets, and essentially, there's so many sort of metaphors here, but you're cleaning yourself up to go to school, to be seen by others, and your lived experience was these, you said the awesome word that I really love in your blog post, the paradoxes. Sleeping in your car, transitioning spaces in your day through a public toilet meth lab. Not a meth lab, but meth den.
Right.
And making yourself presentable for others. The thing that comes to me right now is, how did you deal with the shoulds in that moment? Because how old were you at that point?
I was probably halfway through my first year of grad school, because that's kind of the interesting thing. Like, I'm going to school to learn how to help people.
Yeah. Well,
it's so strange.
And ironically, you did that academically and personally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So like, you don't get to choose your education. You got a great education. While getting a good education. But so first year grad school, you're in your 20s, 30s.
Yeah, 30s.
Okay.
30,
right.
34, 35 at the time. Yeah.
Okay. So like peak being a grown-up, peak adulting.
Yes.
Right.
Had a house, owned a house.
Yeah. How did you get through the shoulds? I'm 35 years old. Here's my lived reality, but here's how I should be. How did you get past the shoulds to accept what was?
I think what helped was understanding more of my queer identity, because that didn't match up to anything from where I grew up or within my family system. So the work through my 20s of trying to come out and explain that and experience the rejection from friends, the experience of rejections from an entire community, I think actually laid the groundwork for that. Like, fuck the shoulds. You know, I know this to be true. I'm now 34 or 35. I know the truth is I'm supposed to be here. The doors were wide open and so clear, but everything around me is kind of falling apart and it's gross and literal blood is under my feet. But I know I'm supposed to be here and I'm going to have to throw the shoulds out the window. And at that time, you know, I had some role models. I had a mentor that didn't really, kind of similar situation to me, didn't really find his vocation until around the same time as me. And I think you have to get through your teens. You have to get through your 20s and into your 30s to really throw the shoulds out. You have to experience life that way. And I think it's really important. And, you know, Jungian psychology, and I kind of alluded to some of it in my article, of kind of the second half of life or second phase of life, where all the things that got you to a certain point aren't really serving you anymore.
Yes. My
the
God,
20s,
that
I think,
resonated.
Yeah, the 20s are kind of, I think they call like the good soldier years. And particularly for me, I was a good soldier for the Lord during that time. So, you kind of boast up the self, and you can push through, and you're amazing, you're incredible, and you have talents. But then when you get to a certain point, and for gay men especially, looks start fading, things start changing. There's a midlife crisis is another term for it too. So there's so many things that happen to a certain point that you have to change.
Yeah.
And it's a necessary change, and it's an okay change. It shouldn't be something you should fear, but we do.
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't be here unless I went through my midlife crisis. I wouldn't be doing this. And I accept the midlife crisis is a dark night of the soul. There is loneliness with that because we are being called to change. And it is so lonely. Because
and you can't stop that change.
You can't stop it. My God, you try. Like King Canute trying to hold back the tide. Right? And you know, you summon all your awesomeness and you double down on the work, double down on the sex, double down on the drinking, double down on the partying, double down on the doubling down. And then, you know, the tide overwhelms you anyway. So you got to learn to swim because you never really had control over the tide anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, even especially for the LGBTQ plus community, I mean, there's not a guidebook for this.
No.
You know, and so many people struggle. They don't know what to do next. They don't know what they're supposed to, they don't even know what their relationship should look like.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother thing, because there's not a whole lot of role models out there, you know, showing us. So we're having to kind of figure it out on our own.
Yep.
And culture, society, you know, has pushed us out so much, disowned us. There's so many weapons against us, religious being a big one, policies, government policies. So it is hard. It is hard work. And it's no wonder so many people in the queer community are so lonely.
Yeah. Yep. But we do so much. The power of the shoulds means that we deny what is. And I say this a lot, but loneliness is a gift. And we need to stop, slow down, feel it, learn from what it's telling us. But easy to say, very easy to say, extremely hard to do. But we don't do it alone. So our loneliness is our loneliness to learn from, because it's our loneliness is trying to tell us something about ourselves and the type of connection that we need. And connection to self, connection to those most important to us, and connection to our communities.
Yes, listen to it. Don't drown it.
Yeah.
Listen to it.
Yeah. And and you know, as I said in previous content and in conversation with my friend Steve Seidel before Christmas, loneliness is, you know, there's a reason that we can, you know, feel lonely around Christmas. It's because we're drowning in the shoulds. We should be, you know, partying. We should be surrounded by people wearing, you know, ugly jumpers and have, you know, a very full social calendar. We need to have presents under a tree, like they're as high as the tree kind of thing. And, you know, sometimes, you know, right at the back of the tree, year after year, is a gift of shit wrapped in Christmas paper, which is loneliness. And we ignore it every single year. We ignore it, but it's not going away. It's just waiting for you to put your hand under there and learn from it. And so by accepting it, we kind of plunge into a long night of the soul, long, dark night of the soul. And fuck me, it's horrible. It really is horrible, horrible. But as I said to Andrew in, you know, the when are we, episode 31, so episode 29, on the loneliness of being gay in a straight marriage. And I got this sense from him, it's like it's the opening of Pandora's box. And you'd have to deal with, unfortunately, and there's no lovely sugar-coated way of doing this, but, you know, when you open Pandora's box, shit flies out, stuff that you've been packing away for such a long time, for life.
Yeah.
But the thing that we forget in being fearful of opening it, the thing that we forget during our long, dark nights of the soul, is that at the bottom of Pandora's box is hope. Hope that the path before us opens up. The people who we need to have in our lives come into our lives.
Yeah.
What we need in that moment is provided to us. And because it was there all along, we just weren't noticing it. And almost the path through loneliness is discarding the shoulds and accepting what is. And going from there. So while we don't go through, while we do go through our loneliness alone, because it's ours and ours alone to work through, we don't do it alone. We don't do, and the connection that we need happens when we accept our loneliness. And so, you know, we get to have really good people, people who have earned the right, people who will respond with empathy, who have earned the right to hear our story and treat it as the precious gift that it is.
Yeah. And they know how to talk to you because you know how to talk to yourself.
Yeah. 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 And so, Justin, I can see that you do that. I know that you do that. You know, it is a life's joy to do that for me. It is my calling. And so there's, you know, a group of people, like a community that I'm building here that allows people, individuals, perfectly imperfect people, to be who they are and learn from their loneliness together. And that's the point. It's not easy, but that's the point. Two more things, Justin. Yeah. I want to explore this line that you said. The depths of despair became the heights of great love. What was that? What was that about?
Well, gosh, that's a whole nother podcast too. First, love. We need more love in this world. I'll just say that.
Yep.
You see a lot, you see it, especially in American culture. There's not a lot of it.
Yeah.
But during a lot of some of the darkest times, I came across individuals, and actually my current partner now, I met him right before that horrible car accident. And I'll never forget. It's so funny. I was able to walk out okay from the car accident, but I had some bruises and I was rattled a bit. He came up, he lived in a different location at the time. He came up and picked me up where I was living and took me to this place hidden in the hills over in Malibu, actually. And we had a dinner together, and we were sitting out by this fire. They even had this beautiful fire that was lit. And we were sitting there just talking about life, and we were talking about our signs. Like, I'm a Sagittarius, and he's also a Sagittarius. And we were both kind of saying, we don't really believe that shit. That's so weird. And he's like, I wonder what it says about Sagittarius is for this day, like our horoscope. Let's look at it. So he Googled something while we're sitting there, and it said something along the lines of, you'll really connect and find love in front of a fire. And he put the phone down, and we both were like, looked behind us at the fire. And it was just a moment where I was like, wow, what a lovely and loving moment this is to experience. And I didn't know what he would become or how powerful our relationship would be in the future, but just in that moment, battled and bruised and hurting and lost. Oh, I was lost. Those little moments came through, and it just warmed me. And that kind of cool evening by that fire, it just really warmed me like that fire. And that's when I was like, this is love.
Yep. You could not have staged that better.
It was incredible.
Yeah. Well, that gives me all the feels. That's awesome.
So little moments like that would happen along the way, and it just, wow, it transcended the hurts, the being lost. It really got me through it. Love can do that. It can be from a partner, it can be from an animal, it can be from a family member. It can really transcend that darkness and give you a reprieve.
I'll add, it could also be from yourself. So I say this all the time, like, I'm feeling lonely. I need to meet someone who will solve my loneliness. And, if anyone's also a member of some kind of, LGBTIQ plus space on Facebook or anything, it's a pretty common thing, picture it like a thirst trap picture, and waiting to meet Mr. Right to save me from this or whatever. It's like, actually, like, the selfie is true, because the person in the selfie is the person who will help you save you from your loneliness. And there are three powerful pillars of connection, and I say this all the time, and I've said this a couple of times in this chat, is that the three pillars of connection are equal, and the connection house can't stand unless the three pillars are strong. The logo for the loneliness guy is three pillars, cradling an individual, and it's connection to self, connection to those most important to us, and connection to community. So by all means, like, letting people love you, you loving people, beautiful, feeling part of your community, identifying community, defining community, how it works for you, be that online, be that in real life, be that, a religious community, a community, whatever it is, however that works for you. But sometimes, particularly for LGBTIQ plus individuals, learning to love ourselves when we've been told that we're not worthy is so incredibly powerful. And I will keep on raising that at each and every opportunity, that you can't solve it by yourself. Like, loving yourself is not the answer to connection. It's a third of the way there.
Yeah. And I'll add on that too, is a lot of people don't know how to love themselves because they were never loved.
Yeah.
So I have to be cautious with people when I'm like, that's not the answer to love yourself. You don't even know how to love. So you learn that from connection to other people. Now, America, I don't know about Australia. America is a very individualistic society. So they want, there's so many self-help books around codependency.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because it causes people to isolate. Codependency was just created. And that's a whole nother podcast. But, it isolates people. When people isolate, their health deteriorates, their mental health and even their physical health. So people don't know how to even love themselves or what that looks like. So you learn by relationships, you learn by opening up, you learn by being vulnerable with people. And when you get that corrective experience, especially LGBTQIA people, because a lot of their parents weren't around or didn't show it. They have to relearn it by dating, by friendships, by chosen family. And once they can have a solid group of people that know how to love them, the love for self increases because they actually know how to now.
I think you've just answered my question. The last question that I was going to ask is, what's the advice for those experiencing their dark night of the soul?
Yeah.
I think you just answered that.
Reach out. I mean, that's what I had to do. I had to reach out. I didn't go, crawl in a hole and hang up posters of self-love. That would have gotten me nowhere whatsoever. I had to reach out. I had to find people to reflect back, to mirror back to me my worthiness, to mirror back to me my struggle, to mirror back to me my loneliness. And then once I had that, I could go isolate in the woods and let some shit out.
Yeah.
Because I knew when I was done, I had somewhere to go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. All the self. I need a drink and a lie down. All the self. I tell you. Wow. And I contend you actually did crawl into a hole.
It was 2 year. Oof.
Yep.
Gosh, Bill, it was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough.
Yep. Yep. You crawled into a hole, you cocooned.
But this is a good moment between you and I where we're connecting, we're talking about something, we're mirroring back to each other our experiences. This is what it's about. And for all those who are coaching or therapists or in mental health or something, they need to know this. Codependency, that rhetoric hurts people. What they need is to connect with people and to reach out and ask for help. And by those relationships, they can really learn to love themselves more and to treat themselves more. And I can tell that with clients. Who they date, who their friends are, tells me a lot about their self-worth. So we got to keep that stuff in check. Yeah. Especially within certain communities, ghosting is big here too. People just cutting off. So I can tell about their relational and attachment style by who they date or who they're in a relationship with and who their close friends are. And they're coming to me for advice because it's not working.
Yeah.
So let's examine this. And it is profound once through my relationship with clients, because this is with any kind of client, I care about them. It is a relationship. And for a lot of people, it's almost reparenting. And for a lot of adults, I'm almost kind of having to train people how to be an adult and how to communicate, because we live in a text only world, and that is a buffer.
Yes.
Call people up, FaceTime them, eye contact, intimacy.
Yes.
Intimacy. Don't get these third parties involved. Go directly to that person. They didn't call you back after a day, reach out to them, talk to them. So anyways, going on a little tangent there, but it's so important to really encourage relationships.
I think
that's how we learn. Yeah.
I think you just booked yourself another place, you know, another article and another podcast chat. Because you're right. And oh my God, like, this is why I love what I do. This is what I love what I do. And I want to just say this to the listener. I want to say this to the viewer. If you've made it this far in, but this is what it's all about. This came through because, like, this level of connection. Sorry,
the dog.
No, that's all right. It's, so 2021. If it's not a dog, it's a child, or whatever. But yeah, it's a having, like, great things come when we show up as we are in that moment. Great things can come when we make that decision. And yeah, I just really hope that this chat, that Justin's blog, Justin's words in his blog, in the blog, have actually supported you. And if you're experiencing continued dark night of the soul, and you're revisiting you're thinking the same thoughts, you're feeling the same feelings, even if those feelings are very amorphous, you can't really pinpoint what it is, but an emptiness, a void, the feeling of lack.
Yeah, numbness.
Yeah, my God.
Because the opposite of numbness is what? Feeling.
Yeah. And that if you are experiencing that you feel inspired by our stories, by this conversation, to take a step. Take a step. And you're allowed to be brave, and you're allowed to be terrified all at once. You're allowed. And you might actually feel those acutely. Put the language to feeling courageous, feeling inspired, and feeling terrified. Yeah. That's how I know that I'm alive.
Yes.
It's how I'm walking my path. When I go off, into a fire trail after driving on a freeway for a little while. Justin, thank you so much for spending some of your day here with me, here with us. Thank you for being you into the world. I just love you. I think that what you are doing and how you are in the process of doing is truly beautiful. And I can't wait to see how you are next. After seeing you in this moment, can't wait to see how you are next and what you do next.
Thank you, Phil. Beautiful time to connect, so thank you.
I do need to have a good lie down. Thank you so much, listener, viewer, for joining.
Aftercare, it's important.
Doing that aftercare. Listener, viewer, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Please leave a like, comment. Sharing is caring, and nothing works better than word of mouth. And indeed, I forgot to say this at the beginning, I'm trialing a study, collecting evidence base, that people who share loneliness related content that destigmatizes loneliness and promotes authentic connection for gay men globally. Those who share content about that are better lovers. So and make better lovers. So help me develop that evidence base by giving it a go and reporting back how you fared. So thank you so much. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and please be you, because we just can't wait to interact with you in the world. All right. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. Thank you, Justin.